Hi, my name is Mark Hipskin, MPM Food Equipment Group. We are the U.S. distributor for the PizzaMaster oven. Today what we'd like to show you is how to receive an oven such as this 3-deck, how to disassemble the decks, roll them through a doorway, and then reassemble in place. We'd also like to show you the tools that you're going to need for this process and a couple of tricks that we've learned along the way. One being, have a nice big container that you can put your small pieces, your screws, your nuts in here. Also have a bag for the separation of stainless steel screws and regular screws, and a few other tricks that we've learned to make your disassembly and reassembly a success. The first thing we'd like to do is remove this eyebrow piece that comes in the crate. So we'll just take the piece. The next thing we'd like to do is remove the 2 shelves that come with the oven. The next step in this process, we're going to want to take off the side panel, the other side panel that looks the same on the other side, and also the back plate. That is basically the outside shell of the oven. For this you will need a Phillips screwdriver or a Phillips bit for your drill, and take all the screws out, and we will show you the ones that have to come out and some of the ones that will stay in place. We're removing our screws. This is where your bucket comes in handy because you want to start keeping track of all the screws and all the small parts. I also want to show you, this is a green ground screw. This is on the middle front part of this right side plate. You want to make sure that that goes in the same spot when you reassemble. Now that we've removed the 6 screws, we're going to remove the panel and just get it out of the way. I usually put it over by the shelves. What we'd like to show you here is the oven comes with 3 sections on this wooden crate pallet, and they are connected with this wood brace. What we'd like to do is remove that, and we do that with a Torque 20 driver, T20 driver. We just remove this board. That way we will be able to get to this lower set of screws on the back plate of the oven. So we continue to remove the screws from the back plate, all the ones at the top, all the ones on the bottom, and then there's 2 rows of screws on either side of the plate that all have to be removed. Also, there's a ground hex head screw at the bottom. We'll take, that's a 5/8 driver, we'll remove that, and remember to replace it in the spot. You can see the upside down triangle that stands for a ground. The other thing you want to remember is keep a screw at the top of either end so the plate remains, so one of your workers can come over and help remove the plate, because it can be a little flimsy, can be a little awkward to hold for one person. We removed all the screws there because some of these screws go into some of the metal framing of the oven, and so to get this shell off, we removed all of them except the 2 middle ones on each plate. And then we are now able to take the panel away. Just like on the back side of the oven crate, there's also a board connecting on the front. So we'll take our Torque 20 again and remove this board. And the reason we're doing this is there's a little screw right here in the bottom of this side panel here that you're going to want to remove. Sometimes it's in a place where you can get at it in between the slats, other times it's not. So what you'll want to do is remove this board so you can take this part of the crate away and then get at this little screw with your screwdriver. What we're going to do now is remove the panels in between the decks of the stainless steel. They're held together by stainless steel screws, and you'll find stainless screws anywhere where the oven is hot. So we'll remove the screws. You'll see they're a little longer. There's also screws in the bottom of this panel as well that you'll have to remove. And again, we'll put them in our bag, keep them in a safe place. Okay, so we're removing the plate, and what I'd like to show you is I just I just put a T for top piece just so you know it came off the top and you can replace it where it came off. I'll do the same for the bottom. So now we've removed our front plates in between the decks. What we want to do now is remove these pieces, which are basically braces in front of the stone. So those will come out. And then we're going to remove all of the things inside the oven because our next step will be to mark and remove the stones. So here are the pieces coming out. And then there's two angle pieces on either corner. These are the door stoppers. We'll put those in our bin. We'll do the same on the second deck. Corner pieces again going in the bin. And then we will remove all of the stuff in the oven, the shelf runners, the flue pieces, the hardware that will connect the legs. And that will be our next step. Just wanted to also mention that the legs are transported in the upper deck. When you're pulling the legs out, you want to make sure that you're doing it nice and slowly and easily because the legs are heavy and you don't want to damage the glass as they're coming out. Our next step here is I marked each stone on the front. I did a TL for top left, top middle, top right, middle left, and so on because we want these stones to go back in the same way they came out. So we're going to start the process of removing the stones. These stones are 50 to 55 pounds. They're fairly heavy, so be careful with them. So you want to move them out of the way and store them in a place where they're not going to get damaged. The next thing we're going to do here is these square tubes that the stones sit on. We're going to remove them. There's a cutout in the front and also a cutout in the back, and they just basically sit in there. So we're going to remove these because when we're moving the decks around, these could come out of place and maybe get wedged somewhere where we don't want them. So we're going to remove these and then we'll put them back in during our reassembly process. Our next step is to remove this left-hand panel where there are flue knobs. There's also a stainless screw here, here, and here. We want to remove those. There's also non-stainless screw here and here, and then we want to unscrew these black knobs, and we'll put all these safely in our bin with all the other parts and screws. Then we'll be able to remove this panel. Okay, so now we will remove this left side panel. Note I've taken the black knobs off of the flue handles. So you also want to note that sometimes you have to pull this out a little bit and around this little hex head screw bolt here up at the top. Sometimes it can get caught on there. So we did that, and now we can remove the panel. So the next step is to remove this front display panel. But before you do that, there are a few things electronically that we're going to have to disconnect. The first one is this ribbon between the display board and the circuit board. So that one clips in to the green circuit board. There's a little clip lock that goes around. You just pull that out, take one side, loosen it up, it'll come out easily. And then this green ribbon just snaps in the board. We just unsnap it. So that's the first step. The second one is there's a black and light blue wire between the decks. This is just held together by a little plastic clip. You just pull the clip to the side and just wiggle and separate. Do that as well down here. And you've got a ribbon down here and here. And then on the bottom, there is another plastic assembly that has a snap lock on the side. You just pull the lock away slightly and again wiggle and separate so you are able to take your front board off. And you'll note that there is different color wires. Upon reassembly, you'll just want to put this back in the same way it came out. Match the green and the black, then you'll know how it goes back together. Just wanted to note that ahead of time. There is a green ground screw here that can remain in place. There's a couple of screws. There's one on the side here, and there are a couple on the top, and those will have to be removed, along with the inside screws, the stainless steel screws, again on each deck, just like it was on the other side. Once this is all detached, you'll be able to pull your front display apart. Note, this is the little clip. We will just pull one side out and detach it. There's a couple little locks on either side. You'll hear it snap out. And also note that this wire here, this ribbon that connects the display, it can only go in one way. There's a little plastic piece on the top, so it can't go this way, it has to go in this way. And ironically, it's where the wire actually is up in the air, so it goes in this way. So just wanted to show you a close-up of that. So I've wiggled and maneuvered this side by side ever so slightly, and now we are able to take this away. And note, there's some flanges. There's a metal flange here, and then a metal flange here. Those go on the inside of this when you're reassembling, just to go forward a little bit here. So when you're putting it back together, you're going to want to work this flange to the inside and just slowly maneuver it back. It's a little tricky. There's a couple of pieces here that these grooves have to fit in, but you'll get it. You just pound a little bit with the bottom of your palm, and you will get it into place, and you'll be able to see these screw holes in the inside. They'll match up, then you'll be ready to reassemble everything electronically. So our next step here is we're going to remove, these are the light wires. These are the wires that go into the light sockets on each deck. They go into this white ceramic block. So we're going to take a small little flathead screwdriver, and on the left side here, we're going to remove the wires going into the front of this ceramic block. They come out like that, and I just pull them down. This is so we'll be able to separate the decks. Again, we're going to do it on the middle deck here. Let me get my screwdriver in, and we'll pull these out as well. You will note that there's obviously these shorter wires. They will go back into the front on this deck, and then the taller ones will go into the top deck. So our next step here is we're going to remove the power wires, L1, L2, and L3. Those are your three hot legs going into this terminal, the top, and this L1, 2, and 3 on the second level. They all start, the power comes in on the lower end of this oven and comes up. So we're going to remove these wires so we can remove the deck. I'm going to do that with a thin, firm flathead screwdriver. So we're going to remove each of the three wires. And we will just pull them out. Note, you'll see L1, 2, 3 on the bottom. You just follow it right up, follow the wire. We'll do it again on deck 2. And we'll be able to pull these out again to separate the decks, and then we'll put them right back where they were on reassembly. So that step is complete. Now we're going to remove the light wires from the socket and the power on the right-hand side of the oven. Again, the white ceramic block is the same as the other side, although on this side there are two wires on the top. They're twisted together. One is a power wire, and one is one wire from the socket, the light socket. So again, we take our flathead screwdriver, we unscrew the little screw here that's holding the wires in. and then remove the wires. Then we want to take and pull the twist apart like this. And I like to flatten out the wires so we can retwist them later. And we want to pull them through. Again, we want to do the same with this socket, this ceramic block, I should say. We will pull these wires out. We again will separate, leaving the socket wires here and pulling the power wires, and then we'll just put them down here. Now we can see that we'll be able to separate this deck. We have the wires, we have the lighting, everything's separate. So we're ready to take these hex head screws out, which we will show in the next frame. Our next step is to take the hex head screws out on the top panel here, and also here, the top one here and here. And then there's two back behind this spring that we'll have to remove this spring to get to. I can get to this one, but we'll have to remove this. You have to remove the spring anyway to take these decks apart, but you want to keep this lower row intact. And what that's going to do, it's going to create a flange, a little guide for when this oven comes back together. This piece will go on the outside of the metal that's left over. We'll be able to see that with a later shot here in this video. Our next step here is we want to remove this plate and this plate. They have 4 hex head screws, and what I like to do is I like to take a black Sharpie and kind of draw around it just so I know how it goes back. I'll also label this. This is the right hand side, so I'll say RT for right top and right bottom. And then we'll be able to remove these plates, and they will go back on, obviously, after the decks are back together. Again, taking apart the hex head screws, you want to take apart the top row, leave the bottom row intact, again, so this oven will come back together. Same down here. I started to do it here. Pretty self-explanatory. These 2 plates come off just like the other side. 4 hex head screws, same situation. We will remove the plates and then we'll put them back on. And again, I like to outline them because it's a little bit different shape, so they go on the same. So this is left top and left bottom. Okay. So now we're going to remove this spring because we're going to need to do so to get past this deck coming off, and also to get back to the hex head screw. So I've got my vice grips. I grab the front part of this spring as flat as I can and have a pretty good amount of tension on there, because we're now going to pull down and over on this thing, and now that's separated. So we can take this, and I have a bag right here because there's a lot of copper paste on this thing and I don't want to get it all over the place, and it's used for the spring to stay lubricated. So that's that one. We'll also remove the bottom screw to get at those hex heads, and so that's that step. So this is the critical part. We're going to remove the decks. We're going to separate the decks. You can see here where it goes inside the flange and inside this flange. The critical part that I have to tell you is you want to lift the deck up, over, and then down, and put it on its back. You can't drag it because there are tiny pieces on the bottom of this deck that keep the deck level that you don't want to mangle. So that's the critical piece. So you can see we took the oven up, over, down, we put it on this edge, and then we backed it up straight up on its back. These 2 pieces here and over on the other side are the 2 critical. They're a 1 millimeter piece of steel that you want to make sure that they are straight and level, which they are. If you drag this deck as you're taking it apart, these can mangle or bend. If that does happen, you want to make sure that they're straightened back out with some sort of a pliers or something, straighten back out before it goes back together. Now you can easily move these decks one by one through a doorway where we will reassemble the oven.